too. So obviously, as men, we struggle with opening up, being vulnerable. It's in our, I don't know, it's not in our DNA to, we got to be the tough guy. We got to hold it all in. This goes for men in marriage. This goes for men as fathers. This goes to men in their faith. This goes to men who struggle with addiction. This goes to men with mental health issues too. We were just built, we were taught that, we just need to take it on and handle it ourselves. Be a man, they say, right? Be a man, suck it up.
Mhm.
How does somebody get past that? Because, I struggle with it. I'm sure you do too, and opening up and being honest to other men too. Opening up to your significant others and the communication aspect of it and just being open.
I think guys are always looking for an easy way out with all the struggle and adversity they do have to go through, whether they're willing to admit it or not, is get used to the discipline being part of your life indefinite, like forever. It it sucks, but that's our burden to bear. And to some extent, you're right. It is biologically embedded within our DNA. It could be learned over centuries of how things have been done. But generally speaking, men are built for it, and we have to carry the load of doing the things we know that should be done, the things that we know are right to do, regardless of emotions, circumstances, conditions. That's what discipline is. The number one thing that guys can do is, in confidence, find another brother that they can vent to and relate to. If you don't do that, or if you don't have that for yourself, you don't think that you have that brother for you right now, then that's a self-reflection piece. Because I've only been as blessed to be associated with you and other brothers because of how much I've worked on myself. You will not attract the people that you will be able to feel comfortable to vent to unless you've worked on yourself enough. And that's probably the toughest pill for a lot of men to swallow, is like, in a lot of cases, you probably haven't earned the right to have somebody as trusted and as well experienced to be able to give you the advice and feedback that you need, because you just haven't put enough work in yet on yourself.
Welcome to The Real Build. I'm your host, Bill Reiman, your broker builder, and we are back again, part two, with my boy, Eric Hinz. No introduction needed. You already got it on the first one. But for you guys that didn't listen to the first one, go check out the first episode. Eric and I got into a lot of deep topics about Eric's life, his come up with his business, Awaken Inside, and it's just so many amazing things that went full circle in that discussion of how God has helped him in so many different ways. It was just a lot of it was crazy, man. Just the setups of, they were bad events that people would think were bad, but they just led to great things, and it's made you who you are. And the journey's just starting too, which is crazy, right? We're just getting started, and it's yeah, I loved hearing that, man. I wanted to have you back on. We talked about it too, so we're doing part two for the people. So excited for that too, man. But let's get into it a
Grateful to
little
be
bit.
here, brother.
Yeah, yeah, man. Let's get into the discussion a little bit more. Your life full circle. There's a lot. You've had a lot of ups. You've had a lot of downs. Those downs have led to kind of molding you to who you were. Um, let's talk about that a little bit more on, those down moments that a lot of people would just quit and give up, and you continued to drive too. There's a lot of people out there that are starting businesses, and that's why I wanted to get deeper in this with you. There's a lot of people in the beginning, and you're still in the beginning of your business journey, but you don't quit.
Absolutely. Right.
That's the thing, and it's a huge thing in business, and because a lot of people, you get kicked in the nuts much times. It's like you get kicked down, it's hard to get back up, and a lot of people quit, but you haven't quit. So what was the question would be, what has kept you going?
Hmm. Well, first and foremost, God, period.
Yeah.
Um, there were so many points, and there still are, but there were so many points when I first started the gym, and even when I first started my coaching business many, many moons ago, that even though my faith wasn't nearly as strong back then as it is today, it was still abundantly clear to me that I needed to surrender what I thought was the game plan and seek God and his infinite wisdom on the subject matter. Because even when I wasn't having things that were directly affecting or influencing my journey, I still had stuff like on the home front where I had two brothers with depression, suffering with suicidal tendencies that I had ongoing as I was building the gym out. And managing that emotional burden as I was on this path was just like ever more sharpening my iron, so to speak, and cultivating the man who I am today. But aside from having those conversations, those sessions in prayer with God, I would 100% not be here if it weren't for some amazing friends and mentors and support systems. Um, you and I both know, been blessed to be in the Warriors for Christ for a number of years now. I was actively part of that when I was going through that part of my journey. When I was going in, living in the gym, when I had the car accidents, when I had all of those things happening for me, I
Mhm.
had the right men around me that I could have that open, honest, candid conversation with. And not only would there not be any judgment, but there would be a level of support and guidance and advice that I needed to hear, almost as if from God's words through their lips. And I think, especially now with what I'm doing today, because I kind of have my hands in multiple pots. Like, not only do I own the gym full time, Awaken Inside, but I also am a men's performance coach with my buddy and business partner, Chris Otto. So not only do we have the podcast together, but we have a small group men's coaching brotherhood that we help guys elevate mentally, physically, and spiritually. Um, and as men, and one thing we often preach about that is so paramount that a lot of men seek these vices and these temptations of hopelessness because they don't have the right men around them as a support group or even just a vent to. Like, we hold our emotions and our baggage and our struggles in so tight, and we wind that up into this deep dark ball of dark matter that keeps us suppressed and hidden and not our best version of ourselves, and not open to having that conversation with other men or with God, because we are in a place of loneliness and helplessness. And so I just remember at pretty much every critical time, if I was struggling, if I needed that helping hand, if I needed that lending ear, I would go to my brothers in Warriors for Christ. I would go to the guys who had been through similar struggles to me before, and I would talk with God, and I had those resources available to me, and I utilized them. But oftentimes, we either realize that we don't have those available, or we know we have them and we don't use them, and that's nobody's fault but your own, brother. Like, that's the reality. So I commend my past self for taking that leap and being vulnerable, because I know a lot of men struggle with that because they may have never had that avenue or that channel before. But you'd be amazed to see what happens when you just have that desperate, intimate conversation with God when it's most needed.
I want to go into that a little bit with you too. So, obviously, as men, we struggle with opening up, being vulnerable. It's in our, I don't know, it's not in our DNA to, we got to be the tough guy. We got to hold it all in. This goes for men in marriage. This goes for men as fathers. This goes to men in their faith. This goes to men who struggle with addiction. This goes to men with mental health issues too. We were just built, we were taught that, we just need to take it on and handle it ourselves. Be a man, they say, right? Be a man, suck it up.
Hmm.
Um, how does somebody get past that? Because, I struggle with it. I'm sure you do too, and opening up and being honest to other men too. Opening up to your significant others and uh the communication aspect of it and just being open, and I'm learning every single day as a new father how to communicate with my wife and trying to get better at it. But not every man's like that. Not every man knows how to do that. They kind of just hold it all in and then they erupt eventually and it all just comes out at the wrong time. And I've been there too. I've been there where I just bottled up so much stuff that it just exploded and it was one of the worst things ever, and you don't want
Yeah.
that. So,
Hmm.
what's your advice to men out there? Because as businessmen too, a lot of us struggle with this just in being open and because we're working, we're entrepreneurs, we're constantly just move, go, 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 go. What's your advice to a man who and how should they open up more? How should they be, because a lot of us are hesitant because of judgment, that
Hmm.
runs rapid, right? That's the first thing. And that goes into our thoughts, to our thought process, our negative thoughts. We're always thinking people are going to judge us. In reality, most of the time they won't. They'll accept it, and being vulnerable actually opens up people to help you. There's a
Hmm.
lot more people out there that want to help you. We
Right.
figured that out with Warriors for Christ. So, how does somebody, get past that point, if you see what I'm asking?
I do. Yeah, I think the first thing to address, that's probably the most important thing, because I think guys are always looking for an easy way out with all the struggle and adversity they do have to go through, whether they're willing to admit it or not, is get used to the discipline being part of your life indefinite, like forever. Um, it it sucks, but that's our burden to bear. And to some extent, you're right. It is biologically embedded within our DNA. It could be learned over centuries of how things have been done. But generally speaking, men are built for it. And we have to carry the load of doing the things we know that should be done, the things that we know are right to do, regardless of emotions, circumstances, conditions. That's what discipline is. It's doing the stuff that we know needs to be done, regardless of how mundane or boring it is, regardless of how we feel like doing it, or if we feel like doing it. So that's not ever going away. But the real dichotomy here that you're picking up on, Bill, and there's no like real right answer because it's such a tug of war, is knowing the right way to express your emotions because they have to be expressed, knowing what the right time, place, and energy to place towards that is as a man, and not bottling that up inside, because we've experienced this before in previous relationships, or maybe even in our current relationships, is when something goes unaddressed and maybe is a small issue, builds up over time and get that snowball effect and becomes a blow up. Nobody wants to have to deal with that conversation or that argument, right? And usually by the time that that happens, it's too late, and it's 9 times out of 10 just because of miscommunication or lack of communication. But the other 1 or 2 times out of 10, we have to take ownership in pretty much every scenario. Like, what could we have been doing better so that my partner didn't feel this way? So I think to address it specifically, the number one thing that guys can do is in confidence find another brother that they can vent to and relate to. If you don't do that, or if you don't have that for yourself, you don't think that you have that brother for you right now, then that's a self-reflection piece. Because I've only been as blessed to be associated with you and other brothers because of how much I've worked on myself.
Mm-hmm.
You will not attract the people that you will be able to feel comfortable to vent to unless you've worked on yourself enough. And that's probably the toughest pill for a lot of men to swallow is like, in a lot of cases, you probably haven't earned the right to have somebody as trusted and as well experienced to be able to give you the advice and feedback that you need because you just haven't put enough work in yet on yourself. So the number one thing is self-reflection. Number two is once you do find that man or those men that you can confide in, is don't sugarcoat anything. If they're a real good friend or a trusted person to confide in, they will give you the real raw, intimate knowledge and information and advice that you need to hear. And if not, you'll find it out for yourself, either that they're not being truthful with you or you're not being truthful with yourself. It's going to be one or the other. Because I think guys often think that person that they need to immediately vent to and talk to before vetting it through a trusted brother or other man is to their wife or their spouse or their partner. And that's, in my personal opinion, I think that's incorrect because that's usually when we data dump too much information, a lot of it irrelevant to the scenario for the sake of venting, to where your wife, your spouse, your partner is going to have information in their subconscious that is actually working against you because we are supposed to be logical, tough human beings. We're not supposed to be emotional. And when we share that emotional side too often or in too much amounts, we lose credibility as men. And though your wife or your spouse or your partner may not say that in that moment, if you keep going to her and you emotionally dump on her your problems, your frustrations, your struggles that you should be operating through regardless from a discipline standpoint, and on the side here venting to men so that you can continue to operate at a high level of standard, then she is going to be building this resume in the back of her head subconsciously against you as a masculine man within that relationship. So that's why, like Chris and I, we've talked about on the show before, is like, if you're going to cry, either cry in the shower or in front of your boys, but never cry in front of your woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say never. There are, I think the times where you cry with or around your woman are things related to her, but not about external circumstances outside the relationship. Like, I'm not going to like have a super tough day at Awaken where I have like a bunch of Karens come through and leave bad reviews and I have stuff stolen or whatever. Like, I'm thinking of worst case scenario that would cause me to like ever want to break down and cry in front of her. Still not going to happen because I have to show, even on the surface, that I've got it. I may not be okay right now, but I'm working through a solution and I'm going to provide for both of us because I'm a protector and a provider. Now, don't misconstrue, though I'm going to be shielding those emotions from Caitlin temporarily in that moment, I'm not going to be harnessing and bottling those up inside. I'm going to go sidebar conversation and call up my boy Bill, be like, dude, you got a sec, man? Because I got to lay some shit on you like that. Today was a doozy. And you know what's going to happen too is God's going to be like, you need to have this conversation with Bill because Bill literally just had the same thing happen. We're going to commiserate on a tough ass day and we're probably going to laugh at the end and be like, man, I'm just so glad I didn't freaking lose control in front of Caitlin and look like just a complete, emotional buffoon. Right. So I think summarizing everything, obviously it's not black and white, but I think it starts with self-reflection. Then it goes to, hey, confide in your brothers and just keep executing to that standard, but obviously not to the fault of not being emotionally transparent when the time comes that you need to be. And honestly, like, your woman's going to respect you that much more if you were going through a struggle point and you go to her and you tell her the story after the fact, after you provide the solution.
Hmm.
Like, babe, I don't know if I talked to you about this last week, but I had X, Y, and Z happen at the gym and it freaking sucked. I wasn't trying to withhold information from you, but I was just trying to get it solved. And like, this is what ended up happening on Friday. And I got it done. And because of that, now we're making, this much extra money, or we brought in this many more clients. And she's going to be proud of you. And she's going to feel fulfilled inside that you took care of an issue without her even needing to stress about it. Because there's not anything that she's going to be able to provide other than increased, heightened emotional response to what information you're giving her. That does no good for either person. So you might as well spare her the turmoil of additional emotional baggage that she probably already is tapped out on with what she's got going on in her life, to where you can continue moving forward and then maybe even, you know, fill up your cup with some of what she's got to work through too and help her out.
So, so good, bro. Yeah, I mean, that's why I love the direction the show, how I switch directions. And I mean, because the show's about just, it's this type of stuff is going to help us as men, help women out there too, as far as like, their businesses, their lives. It affects all this stuff you're saying affects everything. It affects everything in your life. That was so good too, right there. And it's
Thanks,
it's
brother.
crazy having, like you said too, like you can't always have those discussions with your wife. I mean, it's good to have those communications and so on too. And you're not saying that, but it's always good to have somebody that if you are going through a tough time, guarantee I can call you, you've gone through something similar. And there's been ton of times too where I've called somebody and I've been like, "Hey man, I'm going through this." Somebody that's in Warriors for Christ. And they're like, "Yeah, man, I actually went through that last week. Here's what I did." And you get some
Yep.
good, you get some good advice from them on, "Hey, take it this way, take it this way." You got to listen. Like it's like when I first had my baby too. Like I was a new dad, man. I didn't know how to handle her hormones or emotions, all that. Like I didn't know what I was walking into. And I was calling people like Brian Hess, I was calling Brad, I was asking him, and I was calling a few other people, and they're just like, "Hey, just bite your tongue. Whatever she says, just say, 'I got you.' You're there to help. There's nothing you can say that's going to make it better." And I think Brad said that to me too. He's like, there's just nothing. He goes, they're just on a different level. He's like, just do what you can to help them and
Mm-hmm.
just be there for them too. And you just having those people you can talk to brings you back to reality, to where you're like, you know what? You're right. Like, I just need to be there because I don't know physically and emotionally what she's going through. I can't know that. She can tell me, I can see it, and I think it's crazy, but I don't physically and emotionally know it. I'm not going to experience it because I'm not the one having the child. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, amazing stuff right there, man, too. Um, and more men, I agree, need to find other men. Same with women, need to find other women to be able to have somebody to talk to, because it goes both ways. It goes both perspectives as well. Like women need to find that other person, friend or somebody they can confine in too. One thing too, though, as far as men, I think a lot of men look to social media figures, stuff like that, for guidance. I don't always agree with that, just because there's not, somebody can tell you how to do something, but it's not necessarily what you should exactly do because they're doing it too. There's
There's not
been
enough context.
exactly, and there's been you can't always trust what you see. There's been social media people out there that, uh, have claimed good marriages and now they're divorced. They've, and they've made shows about it. You just have to be very find somebody, find people you trust, find people that love you back, that are willing to do whatever it takes. Like it goes vice versa with you and me, man. I know I can pick up the phone and call you and you'll help me. And it's vice versa. Like you'll be there for me.
1000%.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like you need people in your circle like that that just not only push you to be better, not only are always on you about getting better, but are there to help you get better as well, too, just emotionally and physically and mentally as well.
Yeah. And one more point to bring up too, when you're confiding, even, man, I've seen this time and time again in relationships, is you have to be extremely careful who you have conversations with about your wife, your spouse, your
Mm,
husband, your partner. Um, I always err on the side of addressing that with only like my trusted brothers that like I would literally lay it all on the line for.
yep.
Um,
Agree.
because people will reveal their agendas to you based upon the information that you give them. And if you are mistaking venting for talking crap about your partner, um, that's going to open up a world of hurt for both of you. You should never, ever, ever be confiding in someone from that perspective. That's where a lot of times, because it's just the reality is because emotional women are emotional beings. um, Drama is usually a big sticking point as far as um, the attention that is drawn from that, the emotions drawn out of those stories. And if your wife, for example, is going to other women and bringing up situations that she's had with you, um, you, you may not be in control of it. May no longer be your wife's narrative. It may be the narrative of one of her friends. And you have no idea if one of those friends dislikes you or really likes you and wants your marriage to go in turmoil for their benefit, right? And so you have to be extremely careful with any information you share about your relationship or your marriage outside of your marriage. I think I just wanted to make that very clear because that's a very specific scenario where I think it does not warrant having those conversations unless it's with someone very trusted that also is, for example, if I'm married, I'm not going to go to someone, even if I trust them to death. If they're single, I'm not going to go to them with advice on my marriage, right? Just like if I'm, well, but the other way around is true. If I'm
Mhm.
single, I'm definitely going to go to someone who's married for that advice because they're going to know what they were doing wrong and what they did right to get to the committed oneness that they're in now. So,
No, I just wrote this down as you were saying that you should never go into the conversation or go to somebody with the intention of agreeing with you about the problem. You should go with the intention of somebody that wants to help solve the problem, is what I wrote
yep,
down when you were saying that.
huge.
Because that's that I go to you or I'll go to somebody else I'm closer with because I want a result to the problem. I don't want them to be like, "Yeah, man, she's horrible." And that's the way I look at myself too when people approach me about a problem. I don't want to agree with them that what they're coming to me is an issue. No, how can I help you with the issue? And I think a lot of people they seek if they don't like the way I handle it, then don't come to me. But that's what you're coming to me for is you need help with the problem. And most of the time, majority of the time, when you help them with that problem, they're gonna want to come back to you for with more problems rather than just agreeing with them.
Hmm.
Yeah, man, I can't believe her, this and that. Like, because I've had friends like that. I still got friends like that that are like, yeah, I can't believe that I went through that same thing, man. And that's just crazy. No, how do you get through that same thing? What did I do to finally get through it? What perspective can I add to you to benefit you so that you have an easier time with the problem that you're having or the relationship that you're in too. So when you go in with that perspective, changes your world, changes everything
Yeah,
because you're helping,
that's great. Yeah,
you
that's so
know.
good, man.
And
Yeah.
that's with business too, man. That's like, you got employees with problems, and that's how you want to be as a leader within your business too. For those of you listening that are potential clients, that's why you want to help or hire Eric as a personal trainer, help with nutrition because Eric's there to solve your problem. He's there to help you. He's not there just to grab the money and run. He's there to actually he wants to see physical change. He will be on you
Hmm.
until that physical change happens too. And that's the way this podcast is about is just the people that are there, they're intentional, they're there to help, they're there to create or add value and just that's what we care about. It's not about the overall profit and the overall money. Like being in construction, the money's hard, man. It's hard to get but if you build a business too that is there to help everybody's problems, and I got a lot of problems every day. And I'm constantly dealing with a lot of problems every day, but a lot of people come to me with those problems because they know I'm going to deal with the problem.
Hmm.
They know I'm going to
And you
solve
get a
the
lot
problem.
of business because of it,
Yeah.
because you're a problem solver and you care about people.
And that's the
Yeah.
same with you too, man. So huge thing you said there too. Um, One question I wanted to get into with you too, um, is you obviously talked about God a lot on the last episode and then obviously on this episode too. So what is God to you? Who is God? How does somebody find God? Uh, how does somebody hear God? Because the definition of God for you may be different to somebody else, but we all I can't say we all know who God is. There's probably somebody out there listening that doesn't. Um, but you may have a different definition of God and who he is in your life. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. And just a little context. I grew up very similar to you, Bill, right? I was raised in Catholicism via my mom's side of the family. My mom is a, well, I'm a second generation Italian from her side. My grandfather came over from Naples, Italy, in the early 1900s. He was like an Ellis Island kid. And my mom and her family grew up in North New Jersey. And I think a lot of what built the foundation for my relationship with God, with Christ, and the Holy Spirit was through Catholicism and through all those things that I did, Sunday school, Mass, CCD, confirmation, baptism, kind of all of those things. And so I think that led to a lot of like where I'm at today. But I think what has most honed my connection and my relationship with God over these last couple of years, especially on my personal development journey, has been the removal of these very sinful vices that I used to partake in on the regular and frequently. Um, because I'm a big believer that that connection with God is extremely interrupted, and a lot of times it's completely severed depending upon how deep of a relationship you are in with these external sinful things, right? Like a lot of what I talk about with my men in my coaching group is an addiction to porn, to alcohol, to drugs, to gambling. Um, these are all things that cloud our vision, our judgment, just like when we feel like crap after we eat a very like processed or sugary meal, and then we have thoughts associated with a really lethargic, low energy, unmotivated self, they all tie together. So when you're focusing and participating and partaking in all of those things, how can you look to have a welcoming and clear and concise conversation with God in your prayer? Because the reality is, and I know you know this, is the Holy Spirit, who is literally like my best friend, wants to talk with me more often, wants to be like as clear English, like this is what I want you to do. But the more that I'm focusing on and partaking in these sinful things, I'm not able to hear that voice clearly. So, a lot of what I have done to become a more disciplined self has been in the name of God, so that I can clearly follow his plan that he has for me specifically and stop praising and idolizing and following myself only. I think that's a trap that we can often get caught into, is doing all of these things in the name of personal development for ourselves. And truth be told, that's how I originally viewed it. Even though I had a relationship with God, I never made the connection of, oh my God, this is literally interrupting my conversations with him. But as soon as I flipped that script, dude, the the blessings have been bountiful. The struggles have been a lot easier to get through. I'm a lot less emotionally involved with those valleys, and I'm a lot more grateful of those peaks. And that's what's ultimately paved the way to, like, in my terms, success. Because, and I know, dude, just like you said at the beginning of the podcast, like I am just getting started and I'm very excited at that fact. But that has been a huge revelation for me, because who doesn't want a best friend who has done everything, who knows everything, who is of everything, to be that guidance for you? Like, why would you not want that in your life? And regardless of what you're going through personally, professionally, romantically, God is the one that has the solution for all of those things in your heart, for all of those things in your mind, for all those things weighing heavy on your shoulders, both physically and metaphorically. He has always been the one that has kept me true to the path that I know I should be on. And so I think ultimately, like when I started thinking of things from that perspective, it helped a ton. And then, um, I just continue to frame it in that way. And as I've continued on down that path, his voice has been more and more clear to me.
Go into a little bit more, um, for somebody that's listening out there, the belief of, I mean, you've obviously been through, we talked about it on the last episode, a lot of difficult times. How how with those difficult times can you believe in a higher power, um, being a part of that? Because most would be like, why would God do that? Why would he do that to you? Why would he put you in those positions? Why would he make you struggle? If there's a God, why would he do that if he's such a loving God, right? Um, talk about that a little bit, because for the people that out there that are like, he's already saying, yeah, obviously, God's blessed him in a lot of ways. He's done these things for him. How do you know that was him? That's the question. So I'm trying to get you to go deeper into this a little bit.
I wholeheartedly believe everything in our life is perspective,
Yeah.
and whatever lens that we look through for our lives is what we manifest and what we live and what we believe. I've always been under the belief system that God gives his largest and toughest struggles to his toughest warriors, because I've learned through my own growth journey that the tougher situations that I put myself in, the more uncomfortable I am, the more struggle that I experience. No matter how tough it was in those moments, the back end always looked benevolent. It always looked better. I always had newfound perspective. I had results. I had rewards. And it wasn't like I was doing those things or going through those things for that end result, but it happened as a byproduct naturally. And it it's not easy. I mean, it's super easy for me to talk about now. When you're in the moment, when you're in the trenches and you're in the thick of it, and you're in a very depressive state and your mindset is only thinking pessimistically, it's very hard to think that God is going to turn up for you, that your prayers are going to be answered, that you're going to be able to weather the storm. And there are always times I'm still here and I'm still able to talk about this. That that testament alone leads me to believe that all the things that I've gone through are insignificant to like what things I have in the future, because I've been able to go through them. And no matter how much I thought I wasn't going to be able to go through them and I was going to have to quit or what have you, I was able to get to the other side. And as much as I want to think that was just me, like I know that there were points that I wanted to quit, and that if it was really up to just me and you know, I wasn't looking for the right things. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, man, is like when the blessings and the miracles and the what people like to claim are coincidences, when those things happen to me, I immediately stopped whatever I was doing and was grateful for that blessing from God, because I knew that there are no coincidences, that was like a divine synchronicity that I had based upon what I had just experienced. Like the other day, we got back home from a business trip that and also a personal trip that was very fulfilling for both Caitlin and I, but had a big work week in front of us. It was late Sunday night that we had gotten back, and she was telling me that she was feeling anxious. And so we opened up the Bible to something that would address anxiety. And I believe it was Philippians 4:13 or something similar, basically that, to not be anxious and to put all of your trust and your faith in Jesus Christ. And that exact quote, I had been watching a reel the following day, where a young girl at a Cracker Barrel had taken time out of her breakfast, noticed a gentleman who was wearing a Vietnam veteran hat sitting alone at a breakfast table, asked if she may sit down with him. And he told, kind of his story about coming back and how he wasn't initially welcomed as a veteran. And he didn't even get told, thank you for, all the service and work that he had done until after Desert Storm. And basically how he like realized like him, his generation, they were just like a bunch of punk kids that wanted to go into the military and do it and make a difference and do something for their country and for their people. And now he realized that everything that he did was to help, pave the way for the future of the next generations and for their kids. And so he just, in whatever he does, he makes sure that he does it for them. And she asked him, what his favorite Bible verse was, and he said literally the exact same one that I had read to Kate the night before on anxiety. And so like I don't like when something like that, even something as small and minute, is synchronized that way, is aligned. I take that as a direct connection and conversation with God. And so I've had many moments like that happen in my life, and I always make it a point to point those out. And I think when people miss those or they discredit them or discard them is when you continue down a path of, well, I don't think God really hears me or he's out to look for me or whatever. You create this narrative internally that isn't the truth because of how you're framing things and how you're looking for things, particularly, or how you're not looking for things. Um, I think that's ultimately kind of what I can attribute to all of the adversity I've experienced thus far is just maintaining a positive perspective from drawing those things out, and then when things get dark, deep, and heavy, that I'm able to lean on those scenarios, knowing that there's a track record of him taking care of me on the back end of that struggle.
I think when they get dark, deep, and heavy is when, God's always shows himself the most is when, he reveals himself the most through those trying times too. I mean, he's always there. Um, you can hear a lot of people because you brush on how people they veer down this path. They don't hear him. And I've gone that path. I didn't hear him. I was trying. I couldn't. But when you stop, like you said, trying to be so in depth and so absorbed by the worldly possessions, the worldly things around you, and it can happen to us as entrepreneurs quite a bit. We're always chasing that next thing. It's but when you stop and realize these moments that maybe things are slowing down in your business is another opportunity he's putting in front of you to go somewhere else with it. Look at it in a way of perspective. Be more intentional with the things that are happening with around you. That's when you hear him the most. And
Mhm.
it's for me personally, like I've realized that it's like you know, I've had those stressful moments of I mean, we're busy right now. And he's like, you're blessed, man. Like, you got a lot going on. Like, but with me, I'm like, go, go, go. Like, why aren't I getting, we got to get more houses, this and that. We don't have as many contracts on the books right now. But when I stop and I'm like, wait, whoa, listen, listen to him. Like, he's saying, time out here. Like, you got all these houses you're building right now. Like, you don't want to kill your guys and your employees that work for you who matter the most, obviously, too. And you want to take care of your clients too and don't want to get way over your head. Let's slow down here. You can now use this time to, expand and go into Naples and do the things that you've been wanting to do. That was what I'm being told right now, So after this, I'm going to look at office space in Naples because the voice is, I just have such a clear thinking right now. That's what I need to do. It doesn't need to be anything big. I just need that presence. Even if I don't
Mhm.
get a contract this year out of that office, I just have that presence and I can start building that presence.
Love
And
that.
it's
Yeah.
like when you stop and listen and be more intentional, that's when you hear him the most. When you get away from those worldly possessions, when you it's like when we talked about with me with this book, like instead of reading books on money and how to make more money and stuff like that, like and I wasn't getting anything out of it. And I had this voice tell me I need to go back to this because I'm starting to get sucked into these worldly ways and these idols potentially to other people that they chase and chase and chase. They become idols. I mean, they become gods to these people. They don't
Mhm.
realize they're becoming gods. They don't realize they're becoming idols, but they're so hungry for more and more and more and more and more. It becomes almost like your god because you're absorbed by it. When
Yeah.
he's got you, like you said, he's got you. You've been through those times. He's gotten you out of it. He's gotten you, to these places that you're at right now, and you're just beginning, right? You know, so love what you
Uh,
said, man.
Yeah, thank you. And I think to, not to counteract your point, but also a really good point to bring up because we always have a decision. Even indecision is a decision. when we're at our lowest, yes, God is absolutely there, but the devil is the most present at our lowest moments as well.
Yep.
And Satan, he even Satan is so ballsy. He tried tempting Jesus. You remember it after he was baptized by John, and he went into the wilderness and fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. At the very, like, on day 39, the devil presents himself, and you remember he takes him through those three different scenarios, and he says, like, even uses the word of God uh, um, to sway Jesus to basically like have food and to like give up. And I just think of like, man, like we're not Jesus at all. We are not God. But when we're in our lowest moments too, like think about how easy it would be for the devil to tempt us
Mm.
for sure. And like what he could say or what, how he can misconstrue the narrative of what you've got going on in your life or make something seem that much more enticing to partake in, right? It's those worldly and sinful things that whether we've done them or not in the past are always going to be part of the conversation, regardless of how many years you've been sober or how many times you've done it. It's always going to be there. And I love this analogy too, because like when it comes to making a pivotal decision in your life, it's always in those darkest moments that change your trajectory forever on what you do. So, like, and this goes beyond just like flat out quitting. You could go down and execute action towards negative things that aren't going to serve you or your people and completely change course of your life. But there's a story of a man sitting on a fence, and on one side's heaven and on the other side is hell. Heaven, you got Jesus and the angels, and they're like, hey, you coming? And the man on the fence is like, you know what, haven't made my decision yet, not sure, like, I'll let you know. Jesus and the angels kind of part, they go off into heaven. The devil on hell's side just turns, walks away, doesn't address the man. Man goes, wait, hold up, I haven't, you didn't ask me anything, I haven't made a decision yet, like, what if I want to go over there? The devil kind of scoffs and looks at the man and says, you've already made your decision. The fence is mine.
Mm.
And that kind of tells the tale of like when we're faced with going either which direction and we kind of sit on it and we hesitate or we come up with excuses or we think that we're righteous in doing one thing over another, we're more than likely already leading ourselves down the negative path just from staying in that thought process.
Mm.
Because, like, not investing wholeheartedly into positive and beneficial things in the name of God, everything else is going the opposite direction, right? Like a sin, regardless of how bad or how good or how big or how small the sin is, it's still a sin, right? Like according to the Bible, and I know not everybody likes to hear this, but like cursing is just as bad as murder, right? Or is just as bad as rape, like, and that's stuff that like I actively like reflect on, repent, and internalize too, because I'm like, am I being a true man of God to the best of my ability, or am I still sitting on that fence in certain areas of my life? And the answer is most certainly yes, because none of us are perfect. But that is something that I constantly am framing my perspective on as well, because I don't want to be, I want to be a disciple of God. I don't want to have one foot in one door and one out the other, you know?
One thing I've been, I love everything you just said on. I want to keep going with this. Is one thing
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
one thing I thought of too. talking about the lows, the highs and the lows is one thing that popped in my mind, and I've been reflecting on this too. Are the lows really lows? Or is it
Mm-hmm.
just the devil creeping in? Is it just that him saying, like, that you could be better with this, you could be better with that, like, you should be doing this?
Mm-hmm.
When you take into perspective, like, and there's that quote, like, our worst day is somebody else's best day, right? Uh, and when you take that in perspective, like, I'm having a bad day or having a bad quarter or having a bad, time in your business or have a bad customer. Like there's somebody out there that's having it worse than you. When you count your actual blessings and you pause for a second, and I've been doing this more and being grateful for what you have instead of always, once again, entrepreneur mindset. We're on the chase. We want bigger. We want better. We want the plane. We want the yacht. We want the Lambo, the Ferraris. We want all those things. But when you take into perspective, like, God has blessed you with so many amazing things too. And a lot of the stuff you asked for, He's given you too, and it's right in front of your face. But a lot of us are delusional and we don't see it. And we think, oh, we're going through a low time or it's such a hard time right now. Pause and look around for everybody that's out there too. Like take a second. You think you're having a bad day, you're sitting in a nice, if you're a contractor, you think you're having a bad day, and then you're kind of like, oh man, this day sucks. Pause for a second. If you're sitting in a nice truck, your bad day shouldn't be as bad because you God gave you that truck. Or if you're sitting and you got workers working, you got job sites active, you got things going for you, things moving, it's really not that bad. You're gonna think things are bad, but if you got a roof over your head, you got a wife, you got kids, you got food on the table, like start taking things into perspective. Like everything Eric's been talking about here, it's making me think about that too, because I've been doing it more. Like I'm always trying to chase the next best thing, but when you sometimes got to pause and just be grateful for what you have too. And that's not
Mm-hmm.
just saying don't, have goals. Don't, I'm not saying that. Obviously, have your goals. God wants you to have goals. He wants you to think big because that's what He put us here to do. But He also wants you to be grateful for what He has blessed you already with.
Yeah, it's a crush of overachievers, man. It's such a good point you bring up because we're short-sighted
Yeah, big time.
because we're like, hey, on to the next thing. Like,
Yeah,
I know this is accomplished, and even if it's not a hundo, if it's 90%, I can trust my people to get the other 10. And I'm already going to focus on here. There's almost like no rear view mirror whatsoever. It's like go, go, go.
yeah,
And the thing that, and I've learned this a ton from another one of our brothers in Warriors for Christ is Kendall Warnock, is just constant state of gratitude. It's just always being grateful for everything that you have because of that exact reason, right? Like, um, I forget where I heard this silly analogy, but like the billionaire who's like crying in their Bugatti, right? Because uh their life is a wreck or something like that. It's like, dude, are you serious?
yeah, yeah,
We have so much to be grateful for that we're truly blessed with, and even beyond our scope of imagination too, because again, comparing that to what, right? Just like what you said, our bad day today is compared to what? Probably just something within our own life. We're not thinking about that kid in Africa that's got to, has got to walk 20 miles barefoot in the desert to get even a couple ounces of clean water for his like 20 sisters and mother that's pregnant with another one, right? Like we don't think about that stuff when we're in those moments. We think about like, oh, like last quarter, I brought in this much revenue and it was shitty compared to all, like, what are we talking about here? So I think it's definitely one of our biggest struggle points as entrepreneurs, but as people who go the extra mile, who care about our people, to deliver on our promises, we're so focused on the next growth point that we forget to focus on and be grateful for the thing that caused us the advancement and growth in the first place.
Yeah, 100%, man. And once again, another amazing show. So,
Yeah, man.
I
I could definitely see in us have a couple of parts
yeah, yeah, we're
beyond
gonna
the two moving forward into the
oh, for
future.
sure. We're gonna have you on many more times, man. I love the way, and I might have said this last time, I love the way this show has shifted. I'm able to bring guests on like yourself and just talk perspective, life, business, faith, visions, everything is what the show is about now because it all has to do with the same thing, the same common goal, which is being the best versions of ourselves, running the best business we possibly can, and offering
Yep.
a superior product to our clients too, man. So grateful for you, man. This was awesome today. Like I said, we can probably go on for another hour, which we will in the future. Um, just wrap it up in case anybody didn't see the last episode. Eric, where can people find and connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm mainly on Instagram at Eric Hinz, EricHinzz. My gym, as well as my men's coaching group, the Iron Mind Tribe, are both in my biography on my Instagram. And I'm on Facebook as well, Eric A. Hinz. You guys feel free to connect. Love to start a conversation with you guys, connect on business, provide lessons learned, whatever I can do to help better your life because I know where I was when I first started and I wish I had an Eric to talk to.
We all like this whole episode too, like we said, connect with people, find people that you can relate to, just find people that can help you because it goes a long way, man. It goes a long way in your journey, your path, where it just helps you. I'm million% grateful to the first days I joined the Art Taste Syndicate because it led to the connections I have now outside of that organization and the friendships and relationships we have. And now I have brothers and sisters around the country, around the world that I can call and get advice and help anytime, anywhere. So it's freaking awesome, man. You're
Amen.
awesome, brother. Appreciate
Thank you,
you.
man. I'm super grateful to be here, bro. I love you. And I really appreciate everybody tuning into this episode and just hearing what 2 cents I have to provide. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, man. With that being said, guys, we appreciate each and every one of you. Like, comment, subscribe, and obviously share this show with your friends and family. It goes a long way. 5-star reviews on iTunes only because that's what this deserves. It really does. So anyway, with that being
Agreed.
said, with that being said, I will see you guys on the next episode.